Hello. She'll know. Maybe. Let's just do it.
Is this supposed to be doing things?
Mm-hmm. That's supposed to be us.
Oh. Well, we can't. Oh. Yeah.
If you're watching the replay, we're just waiting for the stream to start on my laptop over here, but we'll go ahead and get started. This is my best friend April, and when she told me she was coming to visit, I was like, awesome, you're going to be here on Webinar Wednesday, so how about you teach us a little something? So maybe it's because we're best friends, or maybe it's because she's really good with words, but she always helps me finish my sentences, and she's really good at explaining what I'm not good at explaining. So that wasn't a very good explanation.
We complement each other so well.
So well. So she's agreed to talk and teach about writing a bio for yourself because
it's important. We'll get into that.
It's important and it's hard, and she's good at it. So,
okay, ready?
Mm-hmm.
Continue. Okay. So first of all, let's go over why we're talking about this. Just like if you have a brand on your website, in your print materials, any kind of marketing that you're doing, you should also have a brand that crosses over into your writing. So you want your writing style to reflect your brand. We also know that your About Me section on your website or wherever you're using it is kind of your first impression. So this you want to be polished. We know how important first impressions are. And ultimately, I think we're doing it because we think it's hard. I said earlier, it's kind of like a first date. You don't know what to say. You don't know how much you want to tell. I personally like to keep my crazy to myself for as long as possible. So we're just going to kind of go over what you should have in what I'm calling a full-length bio, which is probably what you're using on your website. What to write, how you can get started, what to include, basic do's and don'ts. And then we're going to discuss how to leverage all of that information into other areas where you might need to write about yourself. Okay, so first of all, I have a few suggestions for exercises for just getting started, because I think that can really be the hardest part. For me, it's really overwhelming. I don't like talking about myself, and I definitely don't want to write about myself, because then I feel like it's out there forever and ever. Just probably going to scare you a little bit. So here's a few exercises for getting started on writing. First of all, you just don't do the work and you ask someone else to write about you. It's so much easier for me to write about Catherine than it is for me. I can totally just talk for days and days about what she's done, what she can do, her talents. So that is way less overwhelming. So sometimes you can kind of get some help from a friend about, what do you see, or even a mentor. What do you see as my strengths? What kind of things are interesting? And that might be a good way to get started. Another way, this is kind of a basic writing technique, is to start with an inspiring quote. So maybe there's something that really applies to your business goals, or your inspiration, your motivation for doing your work. And maybe that quote doesn't make the final cut of your bio, but it's a good place to get started if you find something else that someone's written that really kind of aligns with your goals.
Put some words on the paper so you don't have a blank.
It's perfect. Yeah, it definitely gets you started. That's a great way to start. Another thing, this is sort of similar but more pointed towards you, are to use recommendations from references or past clients. Not your mom, not your best friend. That's not really a good resource. But a recommendation on your work or service you provided can be a great start to kind of just lay it out there as kind of your initial descriptor. Another one that Catherine's actually used before is an exercise also in asking others to write about you. Do you want to explain that?
Sure. So recently I I gave this a shot. I emailed 20 people and said, I'm just working on my business, and I would like to know what you think I do best. If you could send me back like 3 words or 3
terms or phrases that you associate with like your skills and talents.
With what I do, just to help me get an idea of how other people view me. And so I wrote them all down on one page and then highlighted everything that was similar.
Repeats.
And like 3 terms like stuck out as being like common and repeated. So that really helped me know like what I am good at in other people's eyes and what I can emphasize.
So one thing that might do is tell you strengths that you don't recognize. It can also tell you, you've been kind of doing your own marketing for a decent bit, show you things that your marketing is sticking out that you may or may not want to project, so you can see where you want to enhance something else. Another great way, and this is, you have to be careful with this one, is to look at other bios of people that you like, similar artists or industry professionals. You don't want to copy, you definitely want to be unique. But one thing to consider is to look at someone else's bio and consider what questions they're answering. So if they're writing about their family or they're writing about their history, what kind of questions are they answering? You know, probably not what's your favorite food, but think about those questions, turn their responses into questions, and then you answer those questions and you've got a good start. Another thing is to consider what you can answer or what you can explain in a single word and what needs more explanation. So the example that I'll use is Catherine actually has on her homepage this little cute reference to Diet Coke, which is fun and it's a great personal thing about you, but it's not in your bio. That's not about like who you are and why you're doing your work. Diet Coke right here. So that's something I think it's cute. It's fun to add, but be careful about whether we're using that as a fun tagline on our website or we're using it in our first impression official about me. Do you want to talk about what we talked about when people look at your about me?
I don't know.
We were talking about like they go to your website, you like your homepage, and then
so somebody lands on your website and they're scrolling through, and if they like what's on your homepage, I mean, if you're an artist, they're probably going to go to your tour dates, but any other type of website, they're going to click on about. They want to know, can I get along with this person? Do I like this person? Do I want to work with this person? I like what they do, but do I like them? And can I connect with them? So your about needs to
be personalized to you.
Personalize and be able to connect to your reader.
But that's part of why it's so important, because we know that it does kind of make that additional, okay, you're a musician, but what else are you? Who else are you? It's also, for me, it's really helpful to write like I'm describing someone else. So those might make me sound crazy. But I kind of like think about like, it's easier for me to make a bulleted list of these are my strengths or these are my accomplishments, and then just kind of write in third person and act like I'm writing about someone else. And then I don't feel that pressure of like, ooh, I'm putting myself out there and it's really uncomfortable and I don't want to share that. I'm naturally pretty introverted, and so I like to keep that stuff to myself. Another piece of advice I would really give is to just take time with it. This is probably not something you can write in 10 minutes and then just walk away.
Or like a year, because I'm still working on mine.
Right. So it's something that I think you want to write it, you want to walk away from it, come back to it, reread it. But definitely I think some of these exercises we've talked about is what will help you get started and kind of keep you focused and get you going in a direction. But don't feel like you have to write it today and it's done and, you know, it's forever and ever. And then another suggestion I would really, and this is something I use in any kind of writing, is just to basically write down everything. I kind of think of it as just like stream of consciousness, write down anything you can think of, and then you can cut it down to a reasonable length, or you can decide what goes in my tagline, what goes on my homepage, and what's really included in my about me. So those are some thoughts on getting started. Now we'll talk about what to actually write. So obviously you'd like to introduce yourself. You do want to get to the point. I think, you know, social media has really changed a lot of the way that we do writing. It's changed, the internet has changed a ton of how much we can say and how thorough we can be. So you definitely want to get to the point. The first two, even 1 or 2 sentences need to make the reader want to know more, or it's kind of a lost cause. You definitely want to cover the basics. I think, what do you do? Where are you? Kind of what are you looking for? What are you presenting? If people don't understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, why are they going to follow up with you? Right. So we want to make sure that we're staying focused on ultimately you're offering some kind of service and that things are relating back to that.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah, you got me excited. Okay, so related to that, we definitely want to answer why are you doing what you do? If you don't know, then maybe we need to back up and start with that. But you definitely want to answer why you're doing what you do.
And I sent an email exercise for you guys about that yesterday, actually, not even related to this.
Perfect.
But, if you didn't get that and you want that, just shoot me an email or comment in the chat box.
And that's another way, I think, just to really help you stay focused and so that we're not getting distracted by where you're from and where you went to high school and, you know, what's your favorite band. Like we don't, that's cute stuff. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we just want to make sure that we are relating that back to your actual business, the service you're offering. And okay, well, a lot of these are related, so we're just doing a great job. Really emphasize what makes you unique. I don't need you to convince me that I need a photographer. I need you to tell me why you should be my photographer. Whatever my, you know, I already know I need a photographer. I understand the importance of that. Why do I need you and what makes you special? So that's something that you want to kind of get across in your bio.
Do you want to tell the wedding example that we were talking about? So April was my maid of honor and she went with me to try on dresses and pick photographers. So she kind of brought up the point earlier, like, you know, you needed a photographer, you narrowed it down to these, like, why did you do that? And then,
because even if we're down to, let's say 3 or 4, and I know I love all of this photography, I know, you know, your portfolio is great, you got great reviews, whatever.
You can obviously take pictures.
Yes. How do I narrow it down from there? So that's something I think that an about me section will really help you find people that I think relate well to you. And especially if you're offering a service like Catherine does where you work one-on-one with clients, that's helpful because you know that you're going to have a better aligned visions for what you're doing. And so I think that helps them understand whether you would work well together. And
or not.
Right. Eventually you'll get to a point where, you know, that's not a good choice for me. And so you can say that. So it's good to have this about me section to be able to put yourself out there. I think one thing I'd really like to emphasize is that your about me is more than your resume. It's not LinkedIn. We need to know what's important about you beyond your resume, beyond, like I said, where you went to high school, where you're from. And those things can't, you know, if you're, I don't know why I keep using the photography example, but let's say you're a photographer and you're in Texas and you only want to do local photography, then people need to know that. People need to know you're Texas-based, and that's fine. But again, it's not LinkedIn. It's not a list of accomplishments or previous jobs, or we really want to, people need to get to know you, but also you through the lens of the service that you're offering. Also, I would consider, so accomplishments. A lot of times you'll see, if you're looking at other people's descriptors, you know, albums or awards or any, you know, magazines you've been published in. I think there's definitely a place for that. Especially if you're getting started, I think that it can feel overwhelming if you don't have those accomplishments or you don't have things to list. And I think that's not, the about me is not the place for that. There are other places on the website you can do that. And maybe that's a bulleted list at the end.
Or a press page, like separate.
Right.
People are interested.
And that's where I think sometimes about me can kind of be this like trash can where you dump everything that you really should be somewhere else, but you didn't think about that. So that's where I think you don't want it to be super lengthy. You want it to be concise. You want people to go there and get about me and not all this random other stuff. So that's something, do your accomplishments speak for themselves and can they be elsewhere? Because it's not necessarily your biography. And just like that, there are things you want to, say the things in your bio that don't speak for themselves elsewhere. So with the photography example, we saw those portfolios. We know that you're a great photographer, but what can we get out of your bio that we're not going to get anywhere else on your website? And that's something that I think, again, if your website is your first impression for those people that you're not meeting in person, it really needs to be giving a feel for you. And that's why it should match your brand. It should be something that you're comfortable putting out there. It does represent you well, and really give some insight into who you are. And along those lines, you should always relate it back to you. Again, you want to tell me why I should work with you. So it is about you. but also within the context of the service that you're offering. So we're
Yes.
always relating it back to your passion for design or your interest in marketing, or it's always coming back to, you know, great, I want to know about you, but I don't necessarily need to know your dog's middle name. Like I need to know what that has to do with
and how you can help
the
me
service. So that's something I think is really popular recently, to say to be authentic and to be personal and to add this extra touch of your personal life into the message that you're putting out. But I think you have to be really careful that it's not off topic. Ultimately, people come to you for this advice or this professionalism, and you need to make sure that you're keeping it there. Just a couple of final thoughts on what to write. We kind of talked about this, but I would definitely keep in mind that it's very possible that this can and will change. Just a kind of any marketing tactic, you want to put something out there and see what works. And if it doesn't, try something else. You know, you may get some feedback that you get 10 emails that say you had, you know, I learned so much about you from your website, or you had I loved what you said about this, and it really inspired me or really made me decide I needed to work with you. And so you realize maybe, you know, this string of 6 words was really hitting people in the feels, and so they, you know, that's something you want to use elsewhere. So keep that in mind. One little technical thing is writing in third person versus first person. I think this can kind of go either or. A couple of suggestions if you don't know what this means. First person is when you use I and me, yes. And you know, when you say, hi, I'm so happy that you're here, that's first person. When you say, Catherine lives in Nashville and she, blah, 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 that's third person. So a couple of rules. I would think generally, if you're writing for a group, you would write in third person. If you're writing for yourself, you might write in first person. Some thoughts to keep in mind are, if you're blogging pretty consistently, I would consider that that's maybe your first person outlet, and your website may or may not be as conversational. Again, how formal is your style, the brand that you're bringing across? Do you want to present yourself as more conversational and relatable? Is there some reason that that's not the vibe you're going for? Just those are things to consider when you write it. So I have a few technical do's and don'ts. I will start, there'll be some exceptions to the do's and don'ts, but I have some rules. First rule, proofread, proofread, proofread. Send it to your friend, send it to your mom, send it to your high school English teacher, send it to anybody that will read it, and make sure that people proofread. You want it to be professional and polished. You want it, and just like any part of your website, you would want it to be correct. Catherine had a typo the other day, and I corrected it for her. So also,
Snapchat.
yes. And then, so second rule, edit, edit, edit. You want to be concise, and we're not writing a novel. I think, you know, we want to draw on a reader. We want to make sure that we write well, but people aren't going to stay if it's really long unless you're like super good at writing and then maybe become an author and drop music altogether. And then I would just kind of remind you to dust off your notes from English class, you know, just using correct punctuation and spelling and doing things well. Use more than average everyday words. I love the thesaurus. I think that's a really helpful tool, but you don't want to overdo it. Try to think of, you know, do you really, really, really love music, or is there a better way that you can say that? Those kind of qualifiers can kind of lessen the value of your writing. So I would look for ways to use more than 1 and 2 syllable words. And sometimes that will easily elevate your writing, but definitely be comfortable with what you've put out there and make sure that it represents you. Okay, we'll start with the don'ts because they're scary. I wish I didn't have to say these, but I feel like I do. So
then I might be guilty of several.
I may have corrected a few of these this morning. So excessive exclamation points. I can't. Okay, so they lose their emphasis. If we exclamate everything, what are we even exclaiming anymore? So just be careful. That's, again, I think something that's come over from, we're so used to texting our friends all the time, and now everything is kind of turned into constant kind of social media voice. So definitely there's a time and place for that if that's kind of going to be the look that you're putting out there, but your website needs to be professional. We don't have you know, people aren't printing books on themselves anymore. This is, again, your first impression. This needs to be professional, and we're not going to exclamate everything. So exclamations, careful.
Don't.
Faces of all kinds. And yes or no, I'm the queen of emojis. Love them, okay? I'm all about emojis, but not on your website, especially not in your bio, because there's really nothing. Yeah, there's no reason to use emojis in your bio. Punctuation, faces, super cute. Love them. Don't use them in your bio. Again, along the same lines, anything like haha, LOL, smiley face, you know, that might be something that you're doing in a newsletter or an email or
social media.
Again, a text message, but not in your biography. Again, this is something that if you could print it out and make it a one sheet and hand it out at a networking event, that should be doable. We don't want it to be too simple. Okay, that's my scary don'ts. Be careful. Exclamations, faces, emojis, haha, LOL. Yep. Do's: have a voice. And this, I think, is important. As much as I give you all these rules, a lot of these exercises are just to help you think about what you want to put out there, what you want to be presenting. So you really need to be yourself. Again, people don't want to meet you and then you're totally unaligned with what you had on your website. You really do, as much as I hate to say it, need to be authentic. Be professional, but conversational. I think unless you're having a really formal brand conversational is good to go, because so many things are on the internet now. But again, with my don'ts, just be professional. And then finally, I would say be selective. There are definitely some things, again, kind of back to the Diet Coke example, certain things are just better in one location in one context than they are in another. So just be careful about what you're saying. You know, if a manager or a potential employer or a client is coming to your About Me pretty quickly when they get to your website, is this the first impression that you want to give? Okay, so we have questions. We good?
I think we're good.
Cool. Okay, so finally, I just have a little bit more for you. I want to talk about how I'm a big believer in doing less work for more return. So how can we leverage all of this work that we've put into writing our very beautiful bio into other mediums? Obviously, you're going to have some little About Me sections on your social media profiles. This is where I would say shorter and sweeter. So there may be a really great phrase you have in your bio. There may be some really key terms. Those are the things that you can turn into an Instagram profile, no problem. And maybe even add an emoji. Be okay with that. So that's where you want to pull out those keywords. This will help you present a consistent message across your marketing materials. Website taglines are a great place to maybe add a little descriptor that maybe came from your About Me section. Business cards, any kind of, there's just a lot of different ways, especially I think print materials and social media, that you could take things from your bio and kind of use that across your avenues to present a consistent message. Instagram's a great place to pull a short quote or a tagline from your website, and then you do have some consistency. People see that you're representing the same person across platforms. Those kinds of profiles, though, may change depending on what you're promoting at the time. Like right now, I know Music Biz Besties is getting promoted on your social media, so you can take out your descriptor. So those are things that can change. Again, these will change, and that's why we really wanted to cover the kind of big, formal, official About Me section. So that's what I have.
Awesome. You want to like wrap up like everything we went
So again, I think definitely it's very important that we go over these bios, that you have them, that they're well written. They do represent you. They're your first impression in so many ways. Definitely look for writing exercises. We went over a few, but ways that you can just get started, because sometimes that's the hardest part. If you can get words on paper or Word doc or whatever, just start getting things out and then go back and pull out what's really great, what is really essential to the brand that you want to present, and the services that you're offering. And then definitely go back, think about what you're presenting, what's important that you have in your bio, what can be in other places on your website, what you maybe save for when you get interviewed by Rolling Stones magazine, because no one needs to know about your high school boyfriend before then. Things like that. So Definitely being consistent and being professional and polished are some of the kind of key takeaways from that.
And to know that it's okay to take time with it.
Yes, I think these are things that are always changing. I think, maybe if you're more not accomplished, developed in your work, and you've really got a clear idea of what you're doing and what your goals are, then maybe you've got a bio that better represents you, is going to stay more consistent. But I think, especially when you're starting out and when you're getting these new accomplishments and learning new skills, things are going to change as you go.
Awesome. Well, I already asked her all my questions before we did this. So since we don't have questions, I will kind of make a little recap of what we talked about. So if you're watching the replay, you can find that in the description once I get that loaded online. And I'll also link to the Finding Your Why email that I sent out yesterday. So you can work on that to get you started as well. So thank you, April, for teaching us all your wisdom today.
Yay, thank you.
Bye, everybody.